Suddenly got a tickle in my throat. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the divine being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the divine being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So we're studying the talks that Swami Vivekananda gave that are collected under the title Jnana Yoga, the yoga of wisdom or philosophy. This is chapter 9 of that collection of talks. It was delivered in London on the 3rd of November in 1896, and the title is Unity in Diversity. Unity in Diversity. So before we start, last week we had a long discussion. We didn't read anything new. We simply discussed what had been read so far. Is there anything left over from that? Anything that someone wanted to ask or thought about asking afterwards, or wants to add to the discussion? Anything at all before we start the reading of chapter 9? All right. The talk begins with a quote from one of the Upanishads. I don't know which one, it doesn't seem to say. The self-existent one, this is the quote, the self-existent one projected the senses outwards, and therefore a man looks outward, not within himself. A certain wise one, desiring immortality, with inverted senses, in other words, turning within, perceived the self within. A certain wise one, desiring immortality, with inverted senses, perceived the self within. That's the end of the quote. As I have already said, the first inquiry that we find in the Vedas was concerning outward things. And then a new idea came that the reality of things is not to be found in the external world, not by looking outwards, but by turning the eyes, as it were, as it is, but by turning the eyes, as it is literally expressed, inwards. And the word used for the soul is very significant. It is he who has gone inward. The word used for the soul is very significant. It is he who has gone inward, the innermost reality of our being, the heart center. Now note that, the heart center, this is very important as we open out the idea of diversity, the heart center being the center of unity. He who has gone inward, the innermost reality of our being, the heart center, the core from which, as it were, everything comes out, the central sun of which the mind, the body, the sense organs, and everything else we have are but our rays going outwards. Then another quote, men of childish intellect, ignorant persons, run after desires which are external and enter the trap of far-reaching death. But the wise, understanding immortality, never seek for the eternal in this life of finite things. Unquote. I'm going to read that again. Men of childish intellect, ignorant persons, run after desires which are external and enter the trap of far-reaching death. But the wise, understanding immortality, never seek for the eternal in the life of finite things. The same idea is here made clear, that in this external world, which is full of finite things, it is impossible to see and find the infinite. The infinite must be sought in that alone which is infinite, and the only thing infinite about us is that which is within us, our own soul. Neither the body, nor the mind, nor even our thoughts, nor the world we see around us are infinite. The seer, he to whom they all belong, the seer, he to whom they all belong, the soul of man, he who is awake in the eternal man, alone is infinite, and to seek for the infinite cause of this whole universe, we must go there. To seek for the infinite cause, we must go there, to the infinite, to the internal man. In the infinite soul alone we can find it. Quote, well, before we go on, having established the terms on which he's going to make his case, is there any question or comment about what the Swami has said so far?
When he says the word used for soul is very significant, is he referring to the self-existent one?
Yes.
Okay, because I had read this earlier And I wasn't sure about that. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that is indeed the self-existent one. And once we turn inward and truly are able to turn our attention inward, it becomes the self-evident one as well. Thanks for the question. Very on point. Anyone else have anything to ask or add? Okay. So we look for the infinite cause of the whole universe in the soul. Now another quote. What is here is there too, and what is there is here also. He who sees the manifold goes from death to death. In other words, as long as we continue to wish to see and wish to participate in the manyness, I am one, I shall become many, as long as we continue to see and wish to participate in the manifold, we will take new bodies and new action and experience suits so that we can participate therein. We have seen how at first there was the desire to go to heaven. When these ancient Aryans became dissatisfied with the world around them, they naturally thought that after death they would go to some place where there would be all happiness without any misery. These places they multiplied and called svargas. The word may be translated as heavens. So these ancient Aryans, they naturally thought that after death they would go to some place where there would be all happiness without any misery. These places they multiplied and called svargas. The word may be translated as heavens, where there would be joy forever, the body would become perfect, and also the mind, and there they would live with their forefathers. But as soon as philosophy came, men found that this was impossible and absurd. The very idea of an infinite, in place would be, there seems to be a word missing. The very idea of an infinite.
Contradiction?
No, well, I'll just read what it says and we'll make what we can of it. The very idea of an infinite in place would be a contradiction in terms, as a place must begin and continue in time. I see what he's saying. And so there, in other words, of an infinite heaven within time, space, and causation would be absurd, a contradiction in terms, as a place must begin and continue in time. Therefore, they had to give up that idea. They found out that the gods who lived in these heavens had once been human beings on earth who, through their good works, had become gods, and the good and the godhoods, as they called them, the godhoods, is that right? Godhoods, as they called them, were different states, different states of godhood, different positions. None of the gods spoken of in the Vedas are permanent individuals. In other words, they come and go with the cycle in which they became gods. For instance, Indra and Varuna are not the names of certain persons, but the names of positions as governors and so on. The Indra who had lived before is not the same person as the Indra of the present day. He has passed away, and another man from earth has filled his place. So with all the other gods. These are certain positions which are filled successively by human souls who have raised themselves to the condition of gods, and yet even they die. In the old Rig Veda, we find the word immortality used with regard to these gods, but later on it is dropped entirely, for they found that immortality, which is beyond time and space, cannot be spoken of with regard to any physical form, however subtle it may be. However fine it may be, it must have a beginning in time and space, for the necessary factors that enter into the makeup of form are in space. Try to think of a form without space. It is impossible. Space is one of the materials, as it were, which make up the form, and this is continually changing. And this is continually changing. There's apparently a period missing there. So, and physicists will tell you that any solid object that you see and that appears to you to be a solid continuous form is in fact more than 90% empty space, or space. Space is not empty, it's full of information, but nevertheless, it is not solid. It only seems to be solid because of the way our action and experience suits work. John Dobson, the astrophysicist and Vedanta philosopher, said, the reason that when you push on the table, it feels solid is that the material of the table is pushing back. So it seems solid to us, to our senses, because it is pushing back as we push on it and feel it to be solid. Space and time are in Maya, and this idea is expressed in the line, what is that word?
What is here, that is there too.
There's a misprint here where this says what is whole.
Uh,
So what is here, that is there too.
That.
If there are these gods, they must be bound by the same laws that apply here. And all laws involve destruction and renewal again and again. These laws are molding matter into different forms and crushing them out again, crushing the forms out again. Everything born must die, and so, if there are heavens, the same laws must hold good there. Now, are there any questions or comments about that? Anything to ask or add about the fact that heaven is just the heavens, the svargas, are just a subtler form of what is here?
I take it there are also like dark areas that are the opposite of heavens that are also a subtler form of what is here?
Yes, but not in the sense that we think of in the Judeo-Christian tradition. these places are places where we experience, and this apparently is where we go first after we leave the body. This is the story. That after we leave the body, the subtle body, no matter what the rest of its journey may be, whether you're going to follow the path of the fathers and be reborn, or whether you're going to follow the path of the saints and go on and finish whatever it is that you're finishing among the saints and not be reborn in another body. First, you visit this place where you experience within your being, you actually feel all of the pain, anguish, and harm that you have caused while you have been embodied. Whatever you have caused as pain, anguish, negative feelings, unhappiness, harm, whatever ahimsa you have not been, whatever himsa you have created, you experience that. Some people call it a life review. I mean, there are people who describe it that way, and descriptions of near-death experiences and so on. Then, apparently, this is this story, whatever your next step is determined by the condition in which you left the body. If you continue to have desires for the experiences of the manifold, of the outward directed senses, if you still have desires in that direction, you take the path of the fathers, the so-called lunar path. And what is the lunar path? The path of the reflection of the reality. Which is what this is. This is a reflection of the reality. And so, but if you've finished with you no longer have any desire to participate in this manyness, but you do have things still to learn, that is to say, there are still experiences to have, but they don't have to do with outward directed senses. But what we learn by going within, you take the solar path, that which is being reflected. And there you live among the saints. And so that's Brahmadas, that's how it's been told to me. And I've read about it and both heard about it from the Swamis. Anything else that's a question or comment about that?
Oh, that's actually corroborated by some people psychics who've spoken to those on the other side. So I think there's some evidence to support that.
All right. Anything else from anyone?
Hi, Brother Shankara, Somesh here.
Yes, Somesh.
Yes. So, if I understood correctly, if if I don't have any desire anymore, then when I leave the body, then there is no need to come back to this.
If there's no desire to participate in this realm of time, space, and causation, nature, and its manyness, yes, there is no need for you to take another body.
Okay. Would identifying these desires help to say either fulfill or to get rid of those?
Well, what the avatars, the incarnations, and the saints tell us is rather than spend time that way, identifying your desires and getting rid of what are called upadis, limitations. Our desires are limitations. Getting rid of your upadis one by one. The thing to do is seek the knowledge of God. Christ put it this way, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto you. All that knowledge that you would have so laboriously enumerated had you gone that other way. Sri Ramakrishna put it even more simply. He said, find God. That is the purpose of human life. And he says, the way to do it is through devotion. Devotion will take you to the king's throne. The other paths can take you partway there. That this is on page 719 of the gospel. So you will best spend your time in spiritual practice that will reveal to you the truth of your being, rather than trying to enumerate your desires. And Sri Krishna says that if you turn to him in utter devotion and seek refuge with him, that holiness itself shall transform you. And he sees no a sinner. He sees no one who's still trying to fulfill desires. Does that get it?
Yes, I got it. That, running after desires, look for devotion, and that, your desires may go away just because they get you get filled with devotion rather.
Well, Sri Chaitanya puts it very clearly. Chant the name of the Lord and his glories unceasingly. That means every day. Chant the name of the Lord and his glories unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean. That which is reflecting the reality will reflect it perfectly. That the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean. And then the second promise, and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. And Hafiz puts it this way, that when you do that, all of that by quenched, he even makes it a more poetic metaphor. He says that all that becomes holy incense ash, all of your desires. So the pursuit of your divine nature has these other effects. One of them is extinguishing. That's what quench means. Extinguishing the source, that world, this forest fire of worldly lust that raging furiously within. Puts it out. Anything else? This is good. This is what we're doing.
Thank you.
Shankara, through self-realization,
Yes, I'm.
meditation and practices, right? That's what my understanding is.
Say it again, please.
This is that desireless stage will happen through self-realization with meditation and other practices, yoga practices.
Yes,
True, that's
but the primary component
Mhm.
that is that by itself creates the transformation
Yes.
is devotion.
Okay.
When you are devoted to that which is higher,
finding self.
automatically leave behind that which is lower.
That's it. Thank you.
And so the spiritual practices are necessary,
Mhm.
but they are best, they achieve their best result when they are motivated by devotion and love.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
So, Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
so basically all desires are thoughts, right? It's the thoughts that get manifested as desires, if that's the right word.
Yeah, you're doing fine. Swami Prabhavananda said that all desire is nothing more than a restlessness of the mind. How does the restlessness of the mind manifest itself? Through the vrittis, these whirlpools of feelings, thoughts, perceptions. So then these turn into all three of them turn into vrittis, turn into these disturbances of the mind. The disturbances of the mind are, according to Vivekananda, nothing more than a disequilibrium of the gunas. When we learn to sit in the witness seat, particularly through love and devotion, sit in the witness seat and watch what's going on, slowly and slowly, the gunas come into equilibrium. And so our active thinking, feeling, and perceiving dies away. Is that clear?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, well, this business of disturbances of the mind and desires is it's perfectly natural, nothing to wonder about or worry about. To alleviate it, we turn our attention elsewhere. It's very easily said, not so simple in practice. Because, as the Swami pointed out at the very beginning, the self-existed one created the senses outwardly directed. There is a desire for this manyness. There is a simple love of being itself. It's when we are weary of it that we seek the cure. When we're sick of trying to find satisfaction and fulfillment in the outwardly directed, then we begin to seek the cure. And the cure is what the Swami is describing here. Anything else?
To sort of concretize that thinking using, say, chocolate as an example, if we see something that's brown and sticky and has a certain smell, and then our mind reminds us of the taste, and then we get the desire for the chocolate. So, how do we convert that by sort of saying that these are just waves, vrittis, and
Why not eat the chocolate?
That would be good.
Give
There's no
me
reason
that,
not to eat the chocolate.
give me that bad boy yogurt.
Yes. Oh, I'll tell the story.
That story so perfectly illustrates this, what Swayam was talking about.
Thank you for
Tell
reminding.
that story.
Okay. Once, this was in 2007, I was with Swami Sridharananda, the Swami who's in charge of the work in Australia and New Zealand. He was visiting Northern California, and we were at the retreat cabin of the Vedanta Society of Northern California, which is above Lake Tahoe. And the Swami was staying there for a number of days, having done the work that he came to Northern California to do, and he was on retreat. Well, some of the Northern California nuns came to visit him. He was much revered. And they brought 3 half-gallon jars of yogurt. No-fat yogurt, low-fat yogurt, and whole milk yogurt. And they mischievously set them in front of the Swami and said, "Which will you have, Swami? Which would you like us to serve you?" And he paused a moment and with a great glint in his eye said, "Give me that bad boy yogurt." And he enjoyed it immensely. They served it to him with some fruit.
It was
Give me that-
homemade that they had made, right? That the nuns had made.
Yes, it was homemade.
Yeah.
That they,
Yeah.
it was absolutely delicious. Of course, we got a chance to share it, a little bit of it. But Swayam, for us to say, unless you're going to say, for some good and solid reason, I should never have chocolate again, then if you want the chocolate, eat the chocolate. Don't hold yourself apart from things simply because it will be fulfilling a desire. Trust your spiritual practices to cause these things to die away. And focus on Swami Vivekananda had a real love of chocolate ice cream. Once he was at Ridgely Manor in mid-state New York, and he had finished dinner, and it was his habit, as soon as he had finished his meal, to get up from the table and excuse himself and walk away. It was a big dining room. He was sitting halfway down the table. He didn't allow them to put him at the head of the table. And so he had gotten up and was walking out of the room and had gotten to the archway out into the big open area onto which all the other rooms opened. And Mrs. Leggett, Betty Leggett, called after him, "Oh, Swami, we have chocolate ice cream for dessert." It is said that he executed a 180 with military precision. Just on a dime, he turned one and faced back, and within a few strides, he was back at his place at the table and enjoyed his chocolate ice cream immensely. The difference between perhaps myself and Vivekananda, I'll just use myself as an example. If I had that kind of passion for something and it disappeared from the world, I would have a pang of regret. I'm thinking, if I would think, oh, what a shame. The difference between that and Swami Vivekananda is that if chocolate ice cream had simply disappeared from universe, Vivekananda would have never given it another thought. This we can be pretty sure of from reading his talks and his letters. He was able to simply just leave things behind. Now, we too will come to that place through spiritual practice. Why? Because we are tasting something far, far greater. There's no need to lament anything that we have left behind. As Sri Chaitanya says in his prayer, tasting his nectar at every step. This is what comes from spiritual practice.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from anyone? Okay. In this world, we find that all happiness is followed by misery as its shadow. Life has its shadow, death. They must go together because they are not contradictory, not two separate existences, but different manifestations of the same unit, life and death, sorrow and happiness, good and evil. The dualistic conception that good and evil are two separate entities and that they are both going on eternally is absurd on the face of it. They are the diverse manifestations of one and the same fact, one time appearing as bad and another time as good. The difference does not exist in kind, but only in degree. They differ from each other in degree of intensity. We find, as a fact, that the same nerve systems carry good and bad sensations alike. I'll read that again. We find, as a fact, that the same nerve systems carry good and bad sensations alike. And when the nerves are injured, neither sensation comes to us. If a certain nerve is paralyzed, we do not get the pleasurable feelings that used to come along that wires. If a certain nerve is paralyzed, we do not get the pleasurable feelings that used to come along that wire. And at the same time, we do not get the painful feelings either. They are never two, but the same. Again, the same thing produces pleasure and pain at different times of life. The same phenomenon will produce pleasure in one and pain in another. The eating of meat produces pleasure to a man, but pain to the animal which is eaten. There has never been anything which gives pleasure to all alike. There has never been anything which gives pleasure to all alike. Some are pleased, others displeased. So on it will go. Therefore, this duality of existence is denied. And what follows? I told you in my last lecture that we can never have ultimately everything good on this earth and nothing bad. It may have disappointed and frightened some of you, but I cannot help it, and I am open to conviction. And I am open to conviction when I am shown to the contrary. But until that can be proved to me, and I can find that it is true, it cannot, but until that can be proved to me and I can find it is true, cannot say so. The general argument against my statement, and apparently a very convincing one, is this, that in the course of evolution, all that is evil in what we see around us is gradually being eliminated. And the result is that if this elimination continues for millions of years, a time will come when all the evil will have been extirpated and the good alone will remain. This is apparently a very sound argument. Would to God it were true. But there is a fallacy in it, and it is this, that it takes for granted that both good and evil are things that are externally fixed. It takes for granted that there is a definite mass of evil, which may be represented by 100, and likewise of good, and that this mass of evil is being diminished every day, leaving only the good. But is it so? The history of the world shows that evil is a continuously increasing quantity, as well as good. Take the lowest man. He lives in the forest. His sense of enjoyment is very small, and so also is his power to suffer. His misery is entirely on the sense plane. If he does not get plenty of food, he is miserable. But give him plenty of food and freedom to rove and to hunt, and he is perfectly happy. His happiness consists only in the senses, and so does his misery also. But if that man increases in knowledge, his happiness will increase, the intellect will open to him, and his sense enjoyment will evolve into intellectual enjoyment. He will feel pleasure in reading a beautiful poem, and a mathematical problem will be of absorbing interest to him. But with these, the inner nerves will become more and more susceptible to miseries of mental pain, of which the sage does not think, of which the savage, becomes more susceptible to miseries of mental pain, of which the savage does not think. Take a very simple illustration. In Tibet, there is no marriage and there is no jealousy, yet we know that marriage is a much higher state. The Tibetans have not known the wonderful enjoyment, the blessings of chastity, the happiness of having a chaste, virtuous wife, of a chaste, virtuous husband. These people cannot feel that. And similarly, they do not feel the intense jealousy of the chaste wife or husband, or the misery caused by the unfaithfulness, or the misery caused by unfaithfulness on either side, with all the heartburnings and sorrows which believers in chastity experience. On one side, the latter gain happiness, but on the other, they suffer misery too. Any thoughts about what the Swami just said in terms of defining the necessity of evil as well as good, and that as one increases, the other increases, in terms of anything having to do with the external world.
This makes sense, Brother Shankara. Happiness and misery both go hand in hand.
Well, they must, according to what the Swami is saying.
Yes, we experience.
There's simply none. And the more we are able to enjoy, the more sensitive we become,
Mhm.
the more pain we also experience.
That's true.
Just ask any sensitive person.
It's very true, very true.
They are capable of great enjoyments, great creativity, great exuberance. And on the other hand, they are afflicted with the afflictions of the nervous system that come with that high level of sensitivity.
Very true. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone about this?
Brother Shankara, would the end of evil like be what's called the night of Brahman?
Well, it's the end of both good and evil. There is no manifestation whatsoever in the night of Brahman. Brahma, the night of Brahma, the creator, the creative aspect of divinity. In the night, the definition of the night of Brahma is that the gunas are in perfect equilibrium. To a physicist, this equals absolute zero. There is no vibration whatsoever. So there's no manifestation. Vibration is manifestation. So in the night of Brahma, yes, all manifestation, both of evil and good, but the potential which exists in the gunas, the gunas remain as potential, so that when the night of Brahma ends and another day of Brahma begins, which by definition is by the cosmic thought, which can be translated roughly as, I am one, I shall become many. That very cosmic thought causes disequilibrium among the gunas. And I don't want to take the class's time with the full explanation of what happens next, but if you'd like to talk about it sometime, Aaron, we could either do it by Zoom or on the phone or however. There is according to Advaita Vedanta, there's a well-established track for what happens next. Next and next and next, and results in what's here now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
I think one of the pains people of higher spiritual intellect can feel is feeling a great sense of remorse at causing harm or unhappiness to another person or living creature.
Yes. It is an objectification of that sense of separation. When we, you're absolutely right, Brahmadas. Why? Because we intuitively know that there's only one flesh we can harm. And so we feel remorse for having caused harm. Because we know we have harmed the one. There's no reason to continue to beat yourself up about it, though. Having done it, having felt the remorse and learned the lesson, As Swami Swahananda would say, what's done is done. And then he would make this wonderful gesture, go forward. No reason to think about it anymore.
Right.
Anything else from anyone? Okay, we've got a few minutes left. Shall I read some more? All right. Speaking to these English people that were in the room with him, the Swami said, take your country, which is the richest in the world and is more luxurious than any other, and see how intense is the misery, how many more lunatics you have compared with other races, only because the desires are so keen. A man must keep up a high standard of living, and the amount of money he spends in 1 year would be a fortune to a man in India. You cannot preach to him of simple living because society demands so much of him. The wheel of society is rolling on. It stops not for the widow's tears or the orphan's wails. This is the state of things everywhere. Your sense of enjoyment is developed. Your society is very much more beautiful than some others. You have so many more things to enjoy. But those who have fewer have much less misery. You can argue thus throughout. The higher the ideal you have in the brain, the greater is your enjoyment, and the more profound your misery. One is like the shadow of the other. That the evils are being eliminated may be true, but if so, the good also must be dying out. But are not evils multiplying fast and good diminishing, if I may so put it? If good increases in an intellectual, in an arithmetical, if good increases in arithmetical progression, evil increases in geometrical progression. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means that an arithmetic progression is 2 plus 2 equals 4, 4 plus 4 equals 8. Geometrical progression is 4 squared is 16, 16 squared is whatever that is, and so on. And so that's the geometrical progression. If good increases in arithmetical progression, evil increases in geometrical progression. And this is Maya. This is neither optimism nor pessimism. Vedanta does not take the position that this world is only a miserable one. That would be untrue. At the same time, it is a mistake to say that this world is full of happiness and blessings. So it is useless to tell children that this world is all good, all flowers, all milk and honey. That is what we have all dreamt. At the same time, it is erroneous to think, because one man has suffered more than another, that all is evil. It is this duality, this play of good and evil, that makes our world of experiences. At the same time, the Vedanta says, quote, "Do not think that good and evil are two separate essences. For they are one and the same thing, appearing in different degrees and in different guises, and producing differences of feeling in the same mind. I'm going to read that quote again. Do not think that good and evil are two separate essences, for they are one and the same thing, appearing in different degrees and different guises, and producing differences of feeling in the same mind. This is a very potent quote. Any comments or questions about that? Because this is the thesis. This is the diversity, and the Swami will lead us to the unity.
So Swami is saying it's all our perception, right, Brother Shankara? Is it is the perception that we see sometimes happiness and misery? It's all how we perceive the world.
Yes,
He means.
the same person may see, two people may see the same person and have an entirely different reaction to
That is true.
that person.
Mhm. Thank you.
Just as an example, a wife has a husband who has what's called a wandering eye. He has trouble being faithful to her. Into the room where these two people are attending a party, into this room walks a beautiful young woman. To the man, he immediately sees something pleasurable, and I'll see what I can do to possess that. And the wife, who knows her husband's nature, says, oh my God, there's trouble. There's threat.
Yes.
Same person that walked into the room. She hasn't changed a bit. Neither of these people know her at all yet. But there is this very different reaction to that same person.
Very true, Brother Shankara. That's a great example. Thank you. Very good example.
And it's because our senses are outward reaching. If both of those people simply were in that state of a witness and non-reactive, neither one of them would react to this person that came into the room one way or the other. That would just be something that happened, a person that walked into the room. It's their engagement with their outward directedness that causes their fantasy of happiness or their fantasy of threat. So it's a little after 9 o'clock. Shall we leave it there? Anything else from anyone? Question, comment?
When the Swami says, if good increases in arithmetical progression, evil increases in geometrical progression, and this is Maya, the first thing I thought of is how we thought our computer technology would solve so many logistics problems, yet criminal hackers used that same technology to cut off our oil pipeline and hold us hostage, and we had to pay them a hefty ransom for it.
Yeah, and they just did the same thing with meatpacking plants. Poultry and pork plants have been hacked there are a number of them shut down. Major disruptions in the supply chain. So things that bring us pleasure, our unending supply of petroleum and our unending supply of pork and poultry. These hackers cause us misery, cause the society misery by interrupting that flow and
They
making it.
did.
So you're right, you know, the same technology. Oh, how powerful it is. Here we sit, each of us in our own homes, each of us in front of our own device, gathered together to do this. Same internet, same, as you said, technology. Startling. Thank you, Brahmadas. Anything else from anyone? All right. Dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the divine being as mother and father. Any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. Well, that's it until Saturday. Saturday, of course, is the Realizing God class. And then there'll be a talk on Karma Yoga on June the 6th, having to do with the 24 cosmic principles and how they are both our friends and our sworn enemies. Anything else? Okay. Until we meet again. Great.
Thank you, Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
You're
Thank you,
more than
everyone.
welcome. So good to see you, dear.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Take good care.